You can change your life in 6 months. And you might ask, Nevern, how could you possibly know that? To which I would say, I'm a psychologist. I've literally seen people change their lives within this time frame of about 6 months. And you can too. But more importantly, you don't have to go to therapy to change your life. Because in this video, I'm going to distill the essence of how I would go about 6 months of therapy with a client to help them change their lives. And I'm going to distill that essence of how to change your life into about 5 steps that you can take to actually improve your life in some way. So if you feel stuck, if you feel like your life isn't where you want it to be, and you're ready to take practical and evidence-based steps toward transforming your life, then this video is for you. And we're going to jump in with step 1. And step 1 is to focus on yourself. Step 1 is to realize that life change requires self-change. You see, just think about this from my perspective for a moment. When someone comes to me for psychotherapy, I don't have any direct control over their life. I don't have the ability to push and pull levers and press buttons to change the quality of their life. I have to change their life through them, because I can't directly take their partner's hand and put it on theirs. I can't directly put money into their bank account. I can't directly subtract kilograms from their weight. No. In psychotherapy, I help a person by helping them change themselves. It's through changing their behavior and their mind in some way that we can start to improve their lives. This is the principle of psychology. I mean, psychology is the scientific study of mind and behavior. So as a psychologist, I'm trained in how to help someone change their mind and their behavior so that they can improve their life, so that you can align your goals with your mind and behavior. And this principle applies to you too. If you want to change your life, you have to first change yourself. If you want to change your financial situation, for example, you have to change your spending and saving habits. If you want to change your weight, then you have to change your exercise habits and your eating habits. So the first step in the 6-month journey is realizing that your life improvement is dependent on your self-improvement. How are you going to change your behaviors? How are you going to mold productive habits? How are you going to change your emotional state on a daily basis? How are you going to overcome limiting beliefs? Because as Jim Rohn says, your life doesn't get better by chance, it gets better by change. Now, step 2 is to believe that you can change. Because a lot of people are stuck in the limiting belief, the self-limiting belief that they cannot change. You see, it's not enough to realize that to improve our lives, we have to improve ourselves. We have to also believe that we can improve ourselves and therefore improve our lives. And that's the nature of self-belief. You see, if you don't believe you can change, you're not going to take action to change. Think about it in this way. The person who believes that they can't get a job doesn't even apply for it. They don't even apply for the interview. A person who believes they can't lose weight, they don't sign up to the gym. They don't try to change their eating habits. In other words, you have to believe that you can change in order to take action on changing. So for step 2, just take a moment to really bask in the fact that you are not stuck. You are not stuck the way that you are. You've been changing already throughout your life. You are not the same person that you were 7 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. You're very different. And it's helpful to reflect on that. Reflect on that fact for a moment. What did you really struggle with that you're really good at now? What sort of skill do you engage in sort of effortlessly that you could never have imagined 5 years ago, 10 years ago? Even if it's thinking about when you were an infant, you couldn't walk, but then you did. You practiced and you put intention into it and you were able to walk. At some stage, you couldn't write. Try to really recall the fact that at some point in your life, you couldn't use a pen. You didn't have the dexterity. You didn't have the practice, but you developed that skill. For me, I can think about the fact that I really felt anxious the first time I sat in a car and I had to drive. But now I drive effortlessly. So you see, we're capable of change. We're capable of improving ourselves. We're capable of developing skills. We're capable of learning. We are not stuck. And that applies to the same sort of situation that you're in right now. There's something that you need to change, some skill you need to develop, something you need to learn in order to get unstuck. And it's possible to do that. I'm telling you this because most of us feel stuck. We feel stuck where we are. We feel like we keep repeating the same pattern and we can't break out of it. But just notice that even right now, you are not literally stuck. You feel stuck. You're not stuck. Stuck means you're lodged between something, like you're physically stuck in some sort of hole or something like that. But notice right now, you have space around you. You can move to the left, you can move to the right. You could go eat something from the fridge. You could take a walk. You have freedom. You have space. You have the ability to make new decisions. You have to give yourself the opportunity to try something new. Because as Albert Einstein once said, insanity is defined as doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. If you want different results for your life, you're going to have to change. And you need to know you're capable of that. Now, once you know that improving your life is going to mean improving yourself, and once you know that you are capable of improving yourself and changing, then you're going to have to think about how you need to change. And in order to know how you need to change, we get to step 3. Step 3 is to formulate your current pattern. By formulate, I mean you need to deeply understand your pattern, that sequence of events, that little merry-go-round that you're stuck on. You need to deeply understand that. Each link in that chain, you need to understand so that you can decide where to break the chain. Where can I introduce some change? So you need to know how the cycle repeats itself, the cycle that you feel stuck in. You need to understand how that cycle moves. How does that wheel spin? So think about it in your own life. What happens throughout the day? Do I wake up and then start to feel low? And then after I feel low, do I then withdraw? And when I withdraw, do I feel even more low? And when I feel low, I feel less motivated to work. And when I don't work, I feel a bit guilty and anxious. And when I feel guilty and anxious, I start to feel a bit burnt out from the stress. And then I struggle to sleep. And then I wake up the next morning tired and feel low. You know, that's an example of what that sort of cycle could look like. But you need to understand it for yourself. What is the stuckness that you feel? What is that pattern that you can't break free from, that you feel stuck in? Because just think about this for a moment. If you go to a psychologist, they're going to diagnose before they treat. If you go to a doctor, they're going to diagnose before you treat. No doctor will tell you exactly what treatment you need before you open your mouth and explain what you're going through. The same with a psychologist. No psychologist will give you a treatment before you open your mouth and you say what the problem is and you give a bit of context and history. Yet, if you've been on YouTube, you might have noticed that YouTubers, especially in the self-improvement space, often give advice without thinking about what your current context is. What's your unique personality? What are your unique problems? What are your unique goals? People in the personal growth space will often try to throw their treatment at you before they understand your uniqueness, before they formulate what's going on. So if it's a meditation teacher, they'll throw meditation at you. If it's a sleep specialist, they'll throw sleep hygiene at you. If it's someone who specializes in mindset, they might throw limiting beliefs at you. But all of this is a mistake because they don't know what you're struggling with. And in order for you to take effective action, you need to understand the problem thoroughly. That is why step 3 is all about formulation. So what this means practically for you is that for the first month of your 6-month journey, I actually don't want you to change anything. I don't want you to take any action just yet because we first have to formulate, understand, analyze, assess. We have to formulate what's going on first, which means observing what's going on with your behavior, observing what's going on with your thinking, observing whether certain spaces are helpful or harmful, observing whether certain relationships are helpful or harmful. I want you to keep a diary and write down how are you using your time on a daily basis? What's important to you on a daily basis? How are you thinking on a daily basis? How are you feeling on a daily basis? We have to track exactly what's going on. And even if you take the first month to do that, it'll be time well spent. Because as Abraham Lincoln said, if you tell me to chop down a tree and you give me 6 hours, I'll spend the first 4 sharpening the axe. This is the step where you sharpen the axe, step 3. It's all about formulating your stuckness. And then once you've done that, once you've formulated this and you have a good understanding of the pattern you're stuck in, you're going to move into step 4. And this is where we're going to change the pattern. This is where we finally get to the action bit. We take action, we do something differently, we introduce some sort of change into our lives. So the question you're going to ask yourself after that month of assessment and formulation is, given the formulation I have, what change do I need to introduce into my mind and my behavior? And when you decide what to change about your thinking, your emotions, your behavior, I have 2 tips for you. The first is I want you to spend time on changing the things that are going to give you the biggest results. In other words, what is the 20% that I can change that will give me 80% of the result? What do I have the most leverage with? What will give me the best results. This is something known as the Pareto principle. It's the idea that oftentimes it's just 20% of things that we have to focus on to get most of the results. For example, in many companies, there'll often be about 20% of the employees who do most of the work for the company, and the rest are sort of floating around. It's the idea that 20% of the trees that you plant will bear 80% of the fruit. So think about what you need to change that will be most effective given your formulation. So given my formulation, did I notice that it's actually this specific habit that I'm not engaging in that I need to change? Or given my formulation, is it actually my confidence that's a bit low that's stopping me from doing what I need to do? And I know once I work on my confidence, it'll open up a whole range of doors for me. Is it my willpower, my ability to postpone pleasure so that I can get a bigger reward later? Is that the little thing that I can change that's going to give me big results? And then my second piece of advice is that when you decide what you're going to change, when you decide what that little thing is that's going to get you a lot of results, you need to then focus just on that. Just focus on that, or just focus on one or two things for now. And this sounds very counterintuitive because for a lot of us, we want to change our lives radically. We want to have this big transformational moment and we want to come out the other end totally changed. But that kind of change is not really sustainable. A lot of people who try to change too much at once, they feel the weight, the burden of having to do that, and then they fail in the long run. And the other problem with trying to change too much too quickly is that you don't know what's really working for you. It's almost like spraying 3 different kinds of cologne on your wrist when you're trying to buy a new cologne and then saying that it smells good. Sure, it smells good, but you don't know which cologne in particular is creating that smell, or you don't know if it's a combination of all 3. And so you're left in a situation where you kind of have to buy all 3 colognes. But it could be that you just needed one. And it's the same here. When you're trying to change certain aspects of your life, just focus on working on that one thing, because then you'll know if that one thing is bringing the benefits that you need. And then step 5, once you've made some change in your life, is to actually measure whether that change is working. You see, you can't just assume that whatever change you're trying to introduce is actually improving the quality of your life. For example, let's say the change you started to make was meditating. You could commit to that. You could meditate 10 minutes a day and you could keep going for 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, and you might not actually see any change in your life. You actually have to measure whether change is occurring, because oftentimes with self-help, it's not very obvious if change is occurring. With certain medications, for example, it's very obvious actually. Let's say you have a headache and you take a pain pill. You'll be able to notice within 15 minutes whether that pain pill is working or not. This is not the same for self-help techniques. With self-help techniques, you actually need to look very closely to understand, is meditating actually helping me change? Is it helping me change in an effective way? And is it improving the quality of my life? A lot of people in the self-improvement industry, they don't tell you how to monitor whether the technique that they've given you is going to work or not. They just very confidently, I would say with false confidence, tell you that whatever they're recommending to you will definitely work. But that's not the case. Different things work for different people. So you need to assess, you need to monitor, you need to track whether what you're doing is working or not. Now, once you've tracked your progress, one of 2 things is going to happen. Either you're going to realize it's working for you, or you're going to realize it's not working for you. If the first happens, if you realize that the change you've introduced into your life is working for you, you need to double down on it. Perhaps even turn it into a habit. Aristotle is known to have said that excellence is not an act, it's a habit. So in order to change your life, you want to, for the rest of these few months out of your 6-month journey, you're going to want to invest in turning this into a habit. It takes about 2 to 3 months to make a habit. So if you've spent the first month formulating your stuckness, and then you've spent the second month trying to understand how you need to change, then you've got about 4 months left in that 6-month journey to turn this into a habit. But let's take a step back now. What happens if the strategy you're using is not successful? What happens if it's not actually helping improving your life? Well, in that case, I would say that you have to adapt your strategy. You have to be willing to be flexible. You have to be willing to reformulate, to go back to the drawing board and to think about what is actually not working for you. What is this pattern that I'm stuck in? What have I missed? And what other kind of strategy can I introduce to try to create change in my life? And this is not a bad thing, to adapt, to readjust your strategy, because flexibility is needed. Adaptation is needed. In fact, the father of evolution science, Charles Darwin, said that the species that survive and thrive the best are the ones that adapt and the ones that are the most flexible. You see, most of us just stick to what we know. We just keep doing what we're doing, even if we're not getting results. But it's actually those who are flexible, those who are adaptive, those are the people who can create the life that they want. And as Tony Robbins says, stay committed to your decisions, but stay flexible in your approach. If these 5 steps have helped you, give the video a like, share it with someone who might need it, and I'll see you in the next one.